Shabbat Shalom. This week, I experienced what happens sometimes in the minds of rabbis, especially when faced with the task of preparing to preach. While this week's Torah portion, Vayeshev, well, that is this week's Torah portion, it is Vayeshev, my kishkas in here, we're really drawn to next week's reading, which is Vayeshev. Well, guess what? Since we are not going to be holding services next week, I'm going to talk about next week's Torah portion this week. And I hope that's okay with everybody. All right. Parashat Vayeshev introduces us to Joseph. At the beginning of the story, Jacob's son with Rachel, Joseph, is a 17-year-old shepherd working in the fields alongside his older brothers. Joseph is a youth, Na'ar in Hebrew, and he's got it all going on. He's charismatic and he's good looking. As Aviva Zornberg writes, Joseph behaves with the narcissism of youth, with the dangerous unawareness of the inner worlds of others. Who went to high school or college with someone like this? I can give a few. He's a tattletale, continually ratting out his brothers, telling Jacob malicious stories about them. And Joseph enrages his brother by flaunting the fact that he is Jacob's favorite. He even wears the beautiful multicolored coat that Jacob gave him. What was Jacob thinking? I think that the Bible portrays the young Joseph as sort of a male version of Nellie Olson from Little House on the Prairie. So it's not that surprising that when Joseph's brothers see that their father loves him more than them, that they come to hate Joseph. So Joseph is the favored son of the patriarch Jacob, and his mouth and his cluelessness get him into big trouble with his brothers, and the story continues from there. Spoiler alert, after some serious challenges, he ultimately lands on his feet. But that's not what grabbed my attention in this Torah portion. Rather, it was this. This is the line of Jacob. At 17 years of age, Joseph tended the flocks with his brothers as a helper to the sons of his father's wives, Bilhah and Zilpah. By naming Bilhah and Zilpah, the verse tells us that Joseph was working with Dan and Naphtali, and these were Bilhah's sons, and Gad and Asher, these were Zilpah's sons. Okay, so we know which of his brothers Joseph was spending more time with, but that's not what grabbed me either. This week, I found myself thinking about Bilhah and Zilpah. Let's pause and rewind back a few minutes to the beginning of the Amidah. Baruch atah Adonai, our God and God of our patriarchs and matriarchs, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, God of Sarah, God of Rebekah, God of Rachel, and God of Leah. Traditional Judaism has designated 4 imahot, matriarchs: Sarah, Rebekah or Rivka, Rachel, and Leah, who along with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob comprise the 7 ancestors of the Jewish people. But this is not reflected in Jewish prayer. If you were to pray from an Orthodox Siddur or from the non-egalitarian pages of our conservative Siddur Sim Shalom, you'd find that the Amidah mentions only the patriarchs, the men. So it was a big deal when progressive Jewish movements, including our own Reform movement, appended the imahot to the Amidah as a gesture of egalitarianism and of feminist inclusion. That's wonderful. But did anyone get left out? You guessed it, Bilhah and Zilpah. Rabbi Eli Herb writes, there are not 4 matriarchs, there are 6. The 2 that are left out are of questionable status as part of the tribe, our tribe, because they were slaves. I do not know how any self-respecting feminist or progressive Jew can continue to omit 2 of the imahot. Yet, on this topic, the vast majority of the progressive Jewish world cannot seem to move past the discussion of how important it was to include the imahot in the Amidah. We're not including the imahot, friends. We're missing some. Rather, we're making a dramatic statement about how we still do not know how to truly include the imahot. We still actively silence women and strangers. Because of their social status as slaves and concubines, the dominant tradition of Judaism is that Bilhah and Zilpah, while worthy of our admiration and respect, after all, their descendants include 4 of the 12 tribes of Israel, they are yet of lesser status than Rachel and Leah. It is worth noting that a discussion in the Talmud asserts that there are indeed 6 matriarchs, but this opinion was not the majority view. Therefore, Bilhah and Zilpah, while present in the clan of Jacob, weren't really full members of the family. Let's go back to your high school and your college memories, or observe the social milieu of your kids or grandchildren. Just like there is typically a Joseph, there is usually also a Bilhah or a Zilpah, if you notice them at all. Look to the edges. They're the ones who are present, but not really a part of things. They laugh at the jokes of the popular ones, but never tell any jokes or stories themselves. Maybe they tried to, but no one paid attention. Maybe they were the ones who took the tickets at the school dance or hung out at the punch bowl, but never danced. They worked just as hard as many of the other kids at school, but for some reason, when they raised their hands, teachers rarely called on them first. They were rarely invited to parties. These Bilhahs and Zilpahs were not only marginalized socially, but also economically. In adulthood, they may be employed in service jobs or clean people's homes or take care of other people's children, returning home exhausted to take care of their own kids. They live only a paycheck or 2 from economic peril. They were at the greatest risk during the pandemic. Some of these Bilhahs and Zilpahs are treated disrespectfully, particularly by men with power over them. They are treated as objects, lesser humans by these men who take what they want from them without their permission. These are the women who are left out of our prayers. There is a movement in some progressive circles to add Bilhah's and Zilpah's names next to Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah in the prayer books. I think this is an important act of tikkun, repair, and something that we should consider in our own communal prayer life. But truly, I think we could go a long way towards tikkun by noticing, engaging, and working for justice for those who are on the margins of our community and in larger society. Who are these people? How can you create justice? Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Elohei Bilhah, Elohei Zilpah, V'meru Amen. Shabbat Shalom.